Bartonella buddies and fellow health-seeking humans. Last time we talked about SIBO, I was doing fairly well with managing the sulfur sensitivity, and I left it off saying that I was going to take half a Xifaxan and some NAC every third day as a way of keeping SIBO in remission until I didn't need that anymore. Many people, after treating SIBO, they start what's called a prokinetic. A prokinetic works by helping initiate the migrating motor complex, or the MMC, which are the sweeping motions of the small intestine. The small intestine, to put it very simply, has two modes. One is the digesting mode, and one is the sweeping mode. Some examples of prokinetics include Iberogast. That is a herbal blend that works as a prokinetic. People also use low-dose erythromycin, around 50 milligrams, and at that dose, it's not really working as an antibiotic, it's working as a prokinetic. Another example is prucalopride, which is also known as Motility. That's used for constipation, but when you take it out at a smaller dose, it works as a prokinetic in the small intestine. If you've been following Dr. Pimentel's work, you will know that him and his team discovered that when people get food poisoning, which is the #1 cause of SIBO, and that's also the #1 cause of IBS, they developed what are called anti-vinculin antibodies. And these antibodies are directed at vinculin, which is a protein on the nerves in the gut, and that can impair the migrating motor complex. The reason that people develop these anti-vinculin antibodies is because it looks very similar to a toxin that is part of many of the bacteria that cause food poisoning. And so this toxin is called CDTB, and that stands for cytolethal distending toxin B. And that's associated with many, or if not, maybe it's most, is it all? I don't know, of the bacteria that can cause food poisoning. And I'll put up here on screen the bacteria that have CDTB. So when you get food poisoning, your body first creates antibodies to the CDTB, so they are anti-CDTB antibodies, and then it can start attacking the vinculin, and so you're getting a molecular mimicry, which is the fancy or scientific way of saying an autoimmune disease process. So if your gut's motility is impaired and you're not doing that sweeping motion, that is going to contribute to a relapse of SIBO. And studies have shown that when you give patients prokinetics, they maintain remission of SIBO for a significantly longer amount of time than those that don't receive prokinetics post-therapy for SIBO. So I asked one of my GI doctors if he thought that half a Xifaxan every third day might keep my SIBO in check, and he said that perhaps it could. The reason I'm not on a prokinetic is because I'm quite reactive to herbs. I haven't tried Iberogast, but I would bet a lot of money that that would not go well for me. I already tried prucalopride. I had a very painful reaction to that. And I have not tried erythromycin, but I know that the Xifaxan goes pretty well for me. In this interim period, I was just going to stay on the Xifaxan. But then I got a little cocky, and let this be a fair warning to you at home. And I started to back off the Xifaxan. I started to do it once every 4th day, and then I got to a point where I didn't take one for an entire week. Pretty soon after that, I started to bloat fairly severely. My mom and I couldn't quite figure out why that was happening. I mean, in retrospect, now it's like, well, duh, it was SIBO relapsing, you piece of dumb poop. That's how I talk to myself, real nice. You know, but at the time, with so many juggling balls in the air, it would be lucky if they were balls. They're more like flaming rods of fire. So when you're juggling so many flaming rods of fire, it's hard to figure out which one's burning you. We cut out different foods. That didn't help. I talked to my other GI doctor. He was like, well, what if it's SIFO, which stands for small intestinal fungal overgrowth? So I said, well, I'm willing to try to treat that empirically without a test because there aren't great tests for SIFO. And honestly, I am so sick of paying for tests that don't have any published research behind it, I decided to just start with a low dose of nystatin. The nystatin took over a week to get from the doctor to the pharmacy into my hands, and in that time I continued to get more and more bloated, and I became more and more angry that the nystatin wasn't here yet. I was like, I'm gonna tear my hair out if I don't try something and do something. So I just popped a Xifaxan. I was like, well, maybe it's the SIBO coming back. So the nystatin, taking its sweet time to get here, was actually a blessing in disguise, because after about 2 pills of Xifaxan, so 1 a day for 2 days, I already started to feel better. And also, I've been taking 300 milligrams of NAC every time I take the Xifaxan, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half before. I don't know what the correct amount of time to take the NAC before the Xifaxan is, if we're looking to solubilize the Xifaxan and liquefy the mucus layer a little bit. So I just do whatever I feel like. So I'm not surprised that I relapsed with the SIBO. One, I do have the anti-vinculin antibodies, which you can get tested for through a test that's called IBS Smart, which was developed by the Pimentel and colleagues team and is part of the same testing company as the Trio Smart breath test. Hashtag still not freaking sponsored. And because this isn't sponsored, I don't know the exact cost, but I do believe it was under $300. You can Google it, and the Google tell you. So anyway, I think if you can afford it, it's a good thing to know, because Dr. Pimentel says that if you do have these anti-vinculin antibodies, it is imperative that you avoid getting food poisoning again, because then you're more likely to develop even more of these anti-vinculin antibodies, and the longer that you don't have food poisoning, the more likely those antibodies are to go down. And they don't have a therapy currently to make those anti-vinculin antibodies go away, but I do feel like that's something that will be here in the future. Will it be here while I'm alive or while you're alive? I don't know. Hopefully. I don't know how old you are. It's also good to know that you have the anti-vinculin antibodies, because then you can presume that you have a problem with your MMC. And I guess the last good bet that it was SIBO and not SIFO or anything else is because both Dr. Pimentel and Dr. Kangara, I've heard them both say this now, that SIBO is much more common than SIFO. There's actually a lot more about the anti-vinculin antibodies that I could make a video on, and I could do more research and have it be, you know, with all my references and stuff. So if that sounds interesting to you, leave a comment down below. So this whole SIBO relapse sent me back about 2 weeks, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing. So now I'm back to treating the SIBO. As I said, 1 pill of Xifaxan, so 550 milligrams once a day, preceded by the NAC. So I'm a very sensitive patient, and this is what I found works for me, but many people are not going to find 1 pill a day effective. Some people don't even find 3 pills a day effective. As far as the Bartonella treatment goes, I've made announcements, I think, on social media and in the Facebook group that I am an admin of called Breaking Down Bartonella, that I've started 25 milligrams of erythromycin every other day. Yes, you heard that right, 25. I don't mean to say 250. 25. This is actually a huge announcement, and it's been what I've been waiting for a very long 2.5 years. Bonus points for anyone who can comment and say how many times I've said so in this video. So perhaps Bartonella lowers immunity in the gut. I would not be surprised if that was the case. And then it's also perhaps the case that in addition to anti-vinculin antibodies, Bartonella itself can compromise the motility of the small intestine. We know that Bartonellosis is a low-grade vasculitis, and it can cause POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is a syndrome of the autonomic nervous system. So if it affects nerves in the autonomic nervous system, if it affects the blood flow to nerves in the peripheral nervous system, I could see how that might impair the MMC of the small intestine. Also, erythromycin, as I said before, is used as a prokinetic Prokinetic at 50 milligrams. And the reason that they use erythromycin over azithromycin and clarithromycin is that erythromycin is the best out of all of those three macrolides at inducing the movements of the MMC. But I have found literature for azithromycin that it's used sometimes off-label and controversially for gastroparesis, and I did find several articles saying that clarithromycin, it was used in a small amount of preterm infants that were having trouble with feeding, and it helped them eat and gain weight better. I also saw a study saying that it increased orocecal transit time, which is the transit from your mouth to your cecum. I'm doing all this off the top of my head. Look at me go. So that potentially might help with keeping SIBO at bay. Or not. I'm glad I got to film this little update for you today because with the relapse, I've been feeling pretty depressed, to be honest, so it's good to be back, baby. If you're new to my channel, my name is Jake. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, comment, share it wherever you can, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I really want to make helping people navigate their chronic health journey with these edutainment videos my job, and there are a few ways you can help me do that. You can find my Etsy link in the video description box, as well as a link to my Bartonella Babe apparel. 25% of the proceeds benefit Bartonella research. And if you are in a position to do so and you appreciate my hard work and my advocacy, you can donate to my channel via PayPal or Venmo, and the info for that will be in the video description box as well. Bye, Bartonella buddies and fellow health-seeking humans. Bye! Mommy gave me this new food and I got allergic and licked all the hair off my paws. But Mommy figured it out, right? Yes, she always does. What would we do without Mommy? Probably die. Not an overstatement.